Hey everybody, thank you for finding us here at Press A to Talk. This is our show Backlog Crew, where we play old games and talk about them. My name's Kurt, and I'm here with Joseph.
Hey,
There you go, and Ryder. So this is our second episode, so we're going to be covering Worlds 3 and 4, and then the final boss and ending. So just to get impressions, how did y'all feel about this half of the game relative to the first half of the game? Let's start with Joe.
this is a half of the game that I don't remember quite as well from my childhood because, when you're a little kid, you play the first couple levels of a game and then you just stop and come back to it a year later, play the next couple of levels again. But I think I had fun with it. I played a bit of it like a week or so ago, and then I finished it up today. And I was having a little bit more trouble than I was in the first half, at the very least. But I still enjoyed it as much
Trouble
as I did.
how?
Do what?
Trouble how?
I wasn't quite as completionist as I was in the first half. Like there were a couple. I think I
Mm.
died a couple times this go around, and I didn't find everything at least on my first playthrough. But overall, I think I
What do you think,
enjoyed it.
Ryder?
I
Oh,
liked it
sorry,
even
Joe.
less,
You're good.
which is saying a lot, maybe. I don't want to go into it too much now, but I wasn't playing a completionist playthrough at all the first half of this game. But the second half of this game, just to get the bare minimum to progress to the next level, was harder. And that's like two factors. One is the very first world. You have to get like maybe 4 crystals to progress to the boss, and the next one
Yeah,
it's
3 or 4.
5, and it just keeps on going up, something like that. But by the end, it requires 6 or 7 crystals. I can't remember how many it is to get to the boss. And so there's that one factor, and then the other side of it was the levels were just significantly harder to progress through, and there were a few puzzles that I could not get, and not as far as like, oh, I'm dumb and I don't understand how the puzzle works, because pretty much anything that was like mechanical, as far as like I need to move this here or there, or I need to maneuver Wario really carefully to get him through this area, or you know, there's a couple where you had to like punch a block to get another to move. I got all those fine,
Mm-hmm.
but just for the sake, I don't remember where these were at. But there's the like hydraulic like piston essentially that like shoots. There's like a glue ball that
Yeah.
Wario holds onto, and then it launches. I could not get the timing for the life of me on
Oh, I liked that one.
any of them. There's like 3 of them that I can think of, and I could not get any of them to work correctly. I think I only got it to actually launch me correctly one time, and then like freaked out because I wasn't expecting to be launched. I didn't think it was going to happen, and so I hit the platform and then just ran right off, and it sent me right back to the beginning. And so I just quit, and I stopped worrying about it. But anyways, between those two things, I guess kind of 3, 2.5 maybe. It's harder to get to the boss just because it has a higher crystal requirement. The crystals are harder to find in general just because the levels are getting harder to traverse. And then 3, some of the actual puzzle rooms, mini levels themselves were just a lot harder than the first half of the game. And there's some other things that I'll get into kind of when we get to them. But overall, I hate to say it, but I like this half even less than I did the first half.
Yeah, I basically am echoing like both of you combined. Like Joe said, when you play games as a kid, you beat the first world and then you stop playing because you're 10. And then 6 months later, you're like, oh, look, game. And then you beat the first world and then you stop playing. That's how that was. And we got in this section, we kind of hit that wall of what I had not played before. And just instantly, any weight that was being lifted by nostalgia just like fell, and it was just like overbearing. And so I think I was enjoying it through World 4, but once we hit, or sorry, through World 3, but once we hit World 4, I just like hit this wall, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I am now frustrated rather than entertained. And I also stopped worrying about being a completionist. I was getting the bare minimum crystals, and I was still trying to collect all the gold things, but I made it less of a mission. Like I wouldn't restart a lesson, a level if I missed them. Whereas before, I would like make sure I search time low. But yeah, I we'll get into it, but I definitely enjoyed this second half less, and definitely the lack of nostalgia really like tainted my how I thought I felt about this game as a whole. But let's go ahead, Ryder.
Before we go into the next portion, I just want to. This is something I meant to ask last time, but kind of forgot. How many hearts did you guys finish the first half with? Total heart containers. I'll go first. I finished
all of them.
I had all of them at the end of the first half.
What does that mean? I don't know.
6.
How many is all of them? 6?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you have 4 when you start off, and you get a half one for each level.
Yeah, so you have to collect all the gold pieces in both levels of a world, and then you get one whole heart for that world.
But you can get a half heart for each
So
level.
I got all of them.
Okay.
Can you?
I had 4, and
Oh no.
that'll probably go into some of my frustration, and we'll talk about that later. But that's kind of on me. The game was still very playable, but definitely I was probably more frustrated than both of you because going into this with 4 hearts, which is very doable at the beginning, but I started dying a lot more in this half. But I'll let us continue from here, though.
Oh no, you're good. It's a weird health mechanic when if you stop and think about it for too long, because in a lot of games you beat a world boss and then you just get automatically like a health improvement, and like that kind of makes sense as the game gets harder, enemies start doing more damage, but it's not very interesting. It's just kind of like, ooh, I have more health, but now I take more damage, so it really just kind of evens out. Doesn't really feel like a boon. And then there are other games where you have a bunch of stats, and it's like, well, if I sacrifice stamina entirely, I can have max health at like level 3, or not level 3, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And this game is very weird. It's just like basically just do a lot of, I don't know, side questing is kind of a generous word. Just collect-a-thon, really big levels, and just get like 16 things, and then you can get like a whole heart, and it's kind of tedious. That's kind of a weird mechanic now that I think about it.
Mm.
Well, I get these nods of approval, so let's go ahead and jump into World 3.
I don't want to
World 3
dead horse, so that's why I'm just kind of like, yeah.
No, you're good. I understand. So World 3 is called Thrillsville, and when I was first like looking at the names of the worlds for this game, I was like, these are some silly world names, and I realized why. It's because they're completely meaningless and there's no cohesion in the levels at all. We talked about that a little bit last time.
Mm-hmm.
Ryder, you brought it up, but like the first world, it's like it's a forest, and then it's like some ruins in a forest, and I'm like, yeah, sure. The second one, it's like spooktastic something, and it's like a haunted manor, and then it's like a spooky circus, and it's like, those are tangentially related, I guess. But in this one, we have 2 levels. We have an icy mountain, then we have a giant beanstalk garden in the sky kind of thing. It's very, like, I had whiplash jumping from one level to the next, and just like, wait, what's going on?
They're just kind of doing stuff.
You're just going with it. You're like not thinking too hard about it.
I mean, they're just doing stuff at this point, They're just doing what they want and throwing names wherever.
It kind of feels like they're like, oh, go ahead, Ray.
Yeah, you go ahead.
So it kind of feels like they were like, all right, we're going to make 8 levels. We need to like check all the boxes. We need a forest. We need something that's vaguely a water level, kind of. We need a haunted level, an ice level, and a sky level. And they're just like, all right, what are the weirdest ways we can knock these out and not worry about any kind of cohesion at all?
Yeah.
That's how I interpret it.
I think that the game, and I hate that I'm going this direction because I feel like I'm jumping ahead, but I feel like it's really suffering from being a 3D game, because the choices are, you could go like, again, Crash Bandicoot, or Mario 64 and have shorter, self-contained levels they're kind of like thematic to themselves, maybe a part of like a larger world. But they're going a different direction. We're going to have a 3D platformer and make it a bigger space and have a big core of this gameplay to be the mini levels in between. And it feels like they took the mini levels where you actually get the crystals, and they started there with the game, and then they tried to build around it, but they didn't know like how do I connect the dots here, and they're like, let's make a little bit more of a world kind of surrounding these mini levels by having Shivering Mountains, and then let's have that take 45 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and then we'll have another level. And I've done this before, but Wario Land, all of those games, they have the world mechanics similar to Mario, and they go for the wacky stuff. And sometimes it's not, just like a very, very close thematic thing, but it makes a lot more sense from level to level than these. Like, I don't know what they're doing, and I think, again, it suffers from the fact that they wanted to do a 3D game, and when you have 30-minute levels, I don't know. I guess that they felt like, all right, well, we've had enough of a mountain. Let's do a beanstalk or something. I don't know. I talked about it last time. It feels like they threw stuff in a hat and then just spun it around and pulled it out.
Yeah. With a game that's this random and just like wacky, I mean, I think that's a good word for it. I mean, it's admittedly a little nitpicky to be like, well, the cohesion between the environments of the levels was not up to par. I'm totally with you. I thought it was weird. I thought it felt weird. But to say that like it's like a negative, I personally will admit that I'm being nitpicky if I put it in that camp. But I definitely see your points, and there are 3D platformers and 2D platformers that do have like levels that are thematically tied, and I think that does sort of like raise the bar in a way. But to say that just because there's like a sky level after an ice level instead of 2 ice levels is like bad, I don't know. I don't want to be too like hard.
Well, see,
on like the small things.
I think it's okay to be critical of this because it could have easily been solved by them not trying to follow a traditional platforming world system. If they would have removed the whole idea of these worlds and just had it as 8 levels, I think if they would have just had like 8 individual gates rather than having 4 worlds and then 2 gates in each world, it would have been much better. But the problem is that they intentionally grouped them, gave them Excitement Central, Spooktastic World, Thrillsville, and Sparkle Land to make them seem like there's some sort of thematic cohesion that's just not there. And I think that's where they shot themselves in the foot. If they would have just taken out the idea of worlds and just had these as standalone levels, I wouldn't even have this complaint because I could accept that. Again, these levels are like 30 minutes long. I can take each one of them as a Mario world. There's 8 of them. There's 8 worlds in Mario, typically. I don't know. Like I said,
that makes sense. That's a good point.
Like they're sticking too much to the formula while trying to deviate, but being afraid to deviate. I don't know. It's really weird. And this was made in a weird time for video games, like 2001, I think, They're probably still trying to find footing, and especially like Wario, this is the first 3D entry. They're trying to ground it in some way. So they stuck with what they're familiar with.
Yeah. So do you need to defend?
I think it is a fair criticism because it is like they intended to create like separate portions of like a theme park or something where they put like land or ville or whatever on the end of it, and then they just didn't stick with the theme at all whatsoever. I think it would have been probably better to do 8 individual levels, or at least try to group them better or change the themes or something. Because like you said, we have like the Jack and the Beanstalk level in this world that could have easily gone with a forest theme level from World 1. They could have just kept the themes over and then had like a forest themed world. But then they have a bunch of the other levels that don't really make sense to put together. So I think it's a fair criticism.
They could have grouped the forest with the beanstalk, the mirror mansion with the horror manor, the Greenhorn ruins with the pecan sands, and then I guess through the mountain and the circus at the end. I don't know.
Maybe the Japanese names make a lot more sense.
I mean, maybe so. And that's something I tried to like think about was like, well, maybe that, the fact that this is a Western translation, like Pokemon names, they have to try really hard to make them work thematically. But I think that's me giving it too much credit for what it is.
It's still jarring because it's not what you expect from the name. But anyway.
Yeah, sorry, I was double checking to make sure that that Treasure, the studio that developed this game, was in fact a Japanese company, and like, of course it is, because it was like early 2000s Nintendo, so of course it was a Japanese company handling Wario. But yeah, I don't know. In a lot of ways, this game feels very Japanese, but in other ways, it feels like very Western in design. So I was just double checking that. Well, if anyone else has anything to say, interrupt me. But if not, let's talk about the Shivering Mountains, the first level of Thrillsville World 3. So, I mean, it's what it sounds like. We're on a mountain. There's snow and ice everywhere. This is the snow level. We have the snow variations of all the standard enemies, just like we talked about last time. Instead of dinosaurs, they're snowmen. Instead of dinosaurs with clubs, they're called polar bears, but they're just scary-looking snowmen. I don't know why they're called polar bears, because they're not bears at all. And they have like snowman bats, and those are called snow bombers, and they have those instead of the pterodactyls. It's the exact same reskin of enemies, which is really strange because this level actually introduces several unique enemies, some of which I think are interesting. Like there's the turtles. There's just like giant icebergs, and if you like try to walk past them, they'll like move and like push you off a cliff. And if you like sneak up on them and attack them, it turns out that there's just like a turtle with that giant ice block on its shell, and it kind of looks like a weird like proto Koopa kind of thing. I like those. I like the icicle mites, which are the guys that you like pick up and you like pile drive into the ground, and then you can turn them into platforms. There's a few others, but it's so weird to me that every level is like we have to have like these 3 or 4 archetypes, and like they have to be exactly the same but with different skins. That was really strange to me.
Yeah. And there's also a new like mini boss area or mini boss here too.
Go ahead, Joe.
It's the fish guy. I forget what they're called, like the actual names of the fish. But it's the fish that has a little lantern sticking off its head.
Angler.
There you go. Anglerfish. And they introduced the little. I think they introduced the little snowmen barrel guys that you have to use to kill them with.
Mm-hmm.
Did you want me to continue talking about that, or did you want to get there?
No, you go for it.
Okay. Well, these anglerfish guys shoot out pillars of ice that move across the ground that will freeze you if you touch them. And the only way you can kill this boss is by taking little like barrels that have a snowman head on top of them that are sentient beings. You take those, pile drive it into the ground, and the head will shoot off of the barrel into the bulb of the anglerfish. And you rinse and repeat and do that 3 to 5 to 7 times. However many times you fight this guy in this one level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's like 3 times maybe.
Yeah, I remember fighting that mini boss, and I was like, "This is cool. I like this a lot." There's like some strategy about like like moving out of the way, but still being able to attack. And then I remember the I don't remember what it's called. Hold on, the what's it called? The little crystal guy. I don't know what they're called. The like crystal monster that you fight in every single level.
The crystal entity.
Yeah, the crystal entity. I just remember thinking like I liked that boss the first time, and I fought it 7 or 8 times. I really hope that they don't make me fight this boss again, and I had to fight it twice. I'm pretty sure I fight it 2 more times in the course of this level, and I just was like sick of it by the 3rd time because it also gets like more and more health and just turns into like a sponge. And yeah, but I mean I liked the boss in general. It just was very repetitive.
Which one are you referring to? The crystal entity or the angler mangler still?
Yes. I was referring to how the angler mangler was really cool the first time I fought it,
Yeah.
Then I was dreading that it would be like the Crystal Entity in that I would have to fight it over and over and over again with no real like changes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I was gonna say he shows up again in the Crystal Entity in this level as well, and I want to say at this point he has like tracking or something like that. And I don't want to beat a dead horse, but like I'm looking because I thought this was true, and it's literally in every single level
It is.
except for one, except for two. But like I don't know. I'm gonna stop. But you all understand. It's just like the halfway point of the game, I was frustrated and I was like, okay, insert DJ Khaled, like another one. But by the end of the game, I was like, this is number probably 30 that I've fought. I might be exaggerating, but it certainly doesn't feel like it.
I want to say there's probably a battle arena in this level too.
There were so many battle arenas in
I
the
think to me
second
the
half.
battle arenas are a little bit more annoying because it's like there's nothing you can do to progress but wait out the timer. At least with the crystal entities, it's like it's up to you to kill it faster or slower. But the battle arenas is just fighting for a minute.
Initially, I liked it, but I don't know. It just got to where I noticed when I was fighting that I could make more money just by fighting and sucking up the coins than I could fighting and just trying to progress through more waves.
Mm-hmm.
Because the whole draw is like by the time you finish it, the more enemies you take out, the more coins you get in the chest at the end. But I realized you're wasting way more coins by not just sucking them up and killing fewer waves. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very weird that coins spawn like in that section.
Yeah.
But they should just kind of all stockpile, and then you should also get like a multiplier for like how many rounds you've done.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing that I don't think came up last time, like they're on screen for like 3 seconds max, and then they just disappear. Like I don't know. I thought that was baffling. Just such a weird like quality of life like inconvenience.
No,
just me.
The coins.
Yeah.
Yeah. They don't stay for very long at all.
Yeah, and like with the sucking the coins, it doesn't have as much of a range as you would like, and I don't know, and it's also directional, which is a little annoying. So I wasn't really hurting for coins, especially at the halfway point of the game. I just had so many, but I would have preferred something. I guess it wouldn't have made sense for like Sekiro. You just kind of hold the button and they just kind of come to you rather than you have to like.
Fair, that doesn't make sense either. So
no, but I don't know. It was annoying how fast they disappear, and then mechanically, like it was really hard to get to them for how fast they would disappear, and the mechanic to collect them also just wasn't as strong as I would have liked. But again, by the time I got to like the midpoint of the game, I had like 8,000 coins, so I wasn't hurting, and I'm not trying to spoil anything, but I don't think it really mattered.
Yeah, we can talk about that a little bit more at the end, but I was also surprised by that. Mm-hmm. Joe, I played around with like the Wario sucking up coins because you said it was like pressure sensitive with the GameCube triggers. You were correct, and that was very fun when I discovered that. Just having him walk around, just barely like
Yeah. Even when you click, he just like goes up a little bit more.
Yeah, it's really cute. A couple more things about this level. So in Mario 64, they drop you in, and you're like in the courtyard, and you're like, ooh, trees, and then you jump on the tree, and he climbs the trees, and you're like,
Yeah.
Well, that's what happened in this level, except instead of climbing the tree, I just didn't. And I was like, these trees should clearly be climbable, and I was very surprised that they weren't, considering like climbing things, it's a pretty decent part of like any kind of vertical platforming in this game.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, did those trees look climbable to you guys? Did you think that was weird?
Yeah, I tried climbing them, the pine trees.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were just kind of like aesthetic, and I was like, "Ooh, I like this pine tree." And I walked up to it, and they wouldn't let me climb it. I tried punching it, and I was like, "Oh, this is just like painted it on. It doesn't really do anything at all."
Yeah, it was really weird for like a Mario spinoff. I don't know. It felt like a weird oversight. And the only other thing I have written down about the level is there's a part where you're going down like a slidey like ice slope, and you have basically no control. It moves too fast for you to react to anything, and you can zoom right past collectibles, and then you have to do the whole level over to do it again. And that's
that was my
And
biggest
it's not a
talking
fun
point
level.
about this level.
what do you say?
That aspect was like
Go.
the most I had to talk about this level, was that you could miss collectibles way too easily on those 2 slides, and I did not like it.
Mm-hmm.
I think I went back and rushed through it once to see if I could get it, but by that point I'd forgotten where the collectible was on the slide, and I missed it again. And I said, screw it.
Is there some kind of like ramp mechanic? Because there are some things where it seemed like the slope would like turn up, and there would be like a platform over here that I couldn't seem to reach. But I couldn't imagine having like the dexterity or the timing to like make a jump happen and then like launch myself on that slide. Is that a mechanic, or we just don't know?
I don't think so. I'm not sure.
No.
I missed every ramp that was there, so I wouldn't be able to go.
All right. We'll just assume no, so I feel better about myself.
Yeah, probably not.
You'll just have to replay the game. I mean,
Oh, there you go.
Oh yeah, that's what I'll do. I'll just start from the beginning and make my way there.
It's a good
Yeah, it's a great game. Did either of you have anything else to say about this level? About I don't know, snowy mountain,
Not
Shivering Mountains?
particularly.
the little sled creatures were cute, I guess.
There were Christmas lights.
I thought there were Christmas lights. I thought those little sled creatures were like little like Chinese dragon heads on like an actual sled. But I was clicking through like the wiki, and I saw a picture of them, and they're like weird little yetis that are sledding on giant feet.
But
And it's just so much scarier that
Yeah.
way.
on this is kind of like a larger discussion about like the game,
For it.
about like just kind of difficulty in general. I'd say this game is frustrating, but it's not really difficult. And this is one of those sections where like the slave creatures came in. I thought they were cute, but cuteness aside, their obvious goal was to just kind of like, I guess, push me off the map.
Mhm.
I don't think a single one hit me. And like you have portions like this where just mechanically it just doesn't work. You know, there was no risk. I just kind of walked along and would just jump out of the way whenever I saw one of them coming. And as far as I could tell, they had a predetermined path. You know, they didn't look like it was random, so I didn't have to worry about one just coming at like a route that they never came before. So there's stuff like that where it's supposed to, you know, be difficult, I guess, but mechanically it just did not work at all. And there's other points where, like for me, the in some of the mini levels, there's the piston that's supposed to shoot you, and I could not get the timing right for anything. And while that could potentially have been just my fault, I don't think I'm that bad that, you know, I could do it over and over and over and over and just not get it. And it kind of comes to the point that I'm getting at. It's just like, again, mechanically, it just doesn't work as far as I can tell. And, you know, I watched, after I finished the game, went on YouTube and watched someone trying to do them. And this guy was doing like a speed run and had to do like one like 4 times in a row just because he kept on like missing the timing on it and falling off the map. And I don't know if just the window is just that small or what, but like, again, if it's giving issues to someone who's doing like a you know, long play speed run type deal, I don't know. I just don't see how, like, as a kid, I could play this and not be like, this is frustrating and feels broken. And then something we talked about earlier where they're like the glue balls. Like, they're like, yeah, it's a little hard at first, but, you know, just keep... No, that's bad game design. You're saying it's your fault, player, for being bad at this game, and it's not our fault for poorly designing this. And again, on the glue ball, I'll stop here. There's a couple sections here in like the mini levels where you had to rearrange Wario like on the ball to get him to like slide through a spot where there's like barbs. I don't know what to call them.
Mm.
And I remember having to redo like that one section like 3 times because I just kept on like getting knocked off because I would hit him on accident. And like it didn't matter how I would maneuver him, it wouldn't work consistently. At least I didn't feel like it would. And part of this might be solved by having like a free moving camera, but I feel like that was part of the issue is like the camera, like we talked about earlier, is set at like 45-degree like presets. And it was really hard to position yourself in a 3D setting when you can only move at 45-degree angle presets around him on like the x-axis, and then on the y-axis also it can only go 45 and 90. I'll stop now, but I got frustrated with a couple of points, and I think that these are valid frustrations for things that just did not work.
Hey Joe,
Hey,
after we finish recording, do you want to stay on the call and talk about how Ryder's bad at video games?
man, I just pressed A when it was moving and I made it every time.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later. Don't tell Ryder.
Alright.
Okay. But no, really, those are valid concerns. Like
Yeah.
it mechanically is just
Could be more
inconsistent
refined.
at best. Yeah. I
What did you say,
personally,
Jeff? I didn't hear you.
I said it could be more refined.
huh?
Oh yeah, gotcha.
Oh yeah, I personally didn't have trouble with the ball launching thing, but we can't all be good at video games. So I don't know what to tell you, Ryder.
And my part of it might have been for my official console that I was playing on. I had a 10-foot USB cable, and I don't know if there's some input delay on my official GameCube controller on my official console.
Yeah.
But that
The
very
one that
well
looks
might
just
have
like this. The one that looks just like this.
Yeah,
That one?
it
Okay.
actually it looks more my this was my GameCube controller. My GameCube controller looked more like this.
I don't remember
Oh, it's
that
purple.
revision.
It's a GameCube controller.
So, given the fact that I was using this GameCube controller with a 10-foot USB cable
On your
for my
Microsoft
console, yeah, that might have been part of the issue. It's just input delay. I don't remember noticing it at other points, but the other points of the game, timing wasn't as imperative because a lot of actual platforming is lazy, and the rest of it's just beat 'em ups. I can just mash without any real concern.
Yeah.
So literally a millisecond of a delay could have been enough to keep me from being able to platform correctly. So that might be on my end.
Maybe so, but I don't know. I definitely had some finicky moments. As you might have noticed, it got dark in my room. And that's because we're going to talk about the scariest thing that's in this game. I would like to publicly apologize to the creepy angel baby boss from the last episode. And I would also like to cower in fear at the winter windster, which is the scariest thing that's ever crawled out of a hole and found its way to the surface, if we're being honest with ourselves. Yeah, so to paint a picture, so this is the boss of the Shivering Mountains level. It's like, I don't know how to describe it. If you know what Hades looks like in like Kid Icarus, imagine that, but it's like a baby, and that's what its head looks like. And then it has like a super duper tiny creepy body, and it floats around and has like an expressionless dead face, like dead eyes. And it just sort of like floats around and drops stuff on you, and it's just honestly horrifying. Ryder, what do you think of this boss?
Besides my initial terror, I did not understand it. I eventually got to where I could, I kind of got a path, but there was so much going on. I felt like he had like tons of different moves, and I just didn't understand like how to counter them. he was dropping the boulders, and I was like, okay,
Mhm.
drop this boulder. And you go in and throw it in the lava, and it would do like a lava spout, and you could hit him with it. But I could not consistently do that because he was like flying like out of the way
Mhm.
before I could ever like get to him, and I couldn't predict his movements well enough to do that. Um, I'm sure he did some other things as well. I know that there's one attack that maybe um, like freezes you or something like that.
Oh,
Am
you're
I
talking
wrong?
about when he looks at you?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, so there's a spriteling right before you go in that's like, hey, here's how you beat the boss. Also, don't look him in the eyes. And you're like, okay. And you get there and the camera turns and it's just his face in the center of the screen with big red eyes and you have to face away from him. If you face towards him, then you basically it's kinda like Medusa, you basically get like frozen. And you have to like mash buttons to like escape before he attacks you.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's what you're thinking of, I think.
So yeah, he does his little Medusa stare. I'm looking at it. It's called the evil eye attack, I guess. But I initially that happened. I was like, okay, I guess I'm frozen now. And I think I might have taken some damage. And then I realized, like, oh, I can get him to drop down to the ground. So contrary to what the little spriteling told me before I went in, I would intentionally let the attack happen so that it would freeze me, and then he would drop to the ground, and I'd immediately run up to him and just and then I grab him and spin him around or do like a pile drive or something like that.
Hmm.
So I don't know if the game was intended to be played that way. I'm assuming it was because they made him drop down from the sky.
Yeah.
But again, there's just so much happening. I really did not know how I was supposed to the intended way to fight him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Throwing the balls into the lava pits, I think, is the intended method, but you definitely have to aim like 1.5 spots ahead of where he is, and the timing is really weird. But he
Hmm.
does at least go in a circle, but it's still weird to hit him with it. And either way, he just drops to the ground, so you end up
Yeah.
doing the same thing that you were just talking about.
Yeah, the hitboxes with the lava spouts were simultaneously like very big, but like very like strangely shaped. Like it felt like disjointed
Hmm.
because there were times where the lava would shoot up and he would just like barely have like flown past it and it would like graze his foot and nothing would happen. But then there were times where it would go off and he's like all the way back at like the one before this in his pattern, and then he'll just like run into nothing and then like fall down at like
Yeah.
the very like end frames of the lava. It was kind of weird.
And there's
And
also a
then
big
he
delay.
lands and he's
Sorry, yeah.
no, you're good.
I
There
was
there
going
is a
to,
delay there. Go ahead.
yeah, there's a big delay of when you actually throw the ball into the lava versus when it actually spouts up. So there's just a lot of timing that goes
Hmm.
into it and makes it a little bit hard to do.
Yeah, and then if you do manage to hit him, he like falls to the ground, and it's I don't think he always just like came to the center. It seemed like he just kind of falls wherever, and then would jump immediately like back out of the ring and like restart the cycle, and then you'd have to hit him again if you weren't able to like reach him when he fell.
Yeah, he jumps outside of the ring, and the spikes outside of the ring make him fly again.
Yeah, I don't think about it too hard.
Either way, I
Yeah,
still
it's
think this
just
is one of the most interesting bosses from this half of the game.
it really is though.
I
It's not
have
my favorite boss from this half of the game, but like it really was interesting. Like
Interesting. That's the word.
despite everything else, it was better than let's see what we got in the first half of the game. Um,
It
it was
not better than anything.
you don't think so? It was better than the
Maybe,
Battletoad from
yeah. I was gonna say maybe Green
level
Fist,
one.
Mhm.
just because Green Fist was literally just a punch and walk away.
Yeah.
But I think
Uh,
if it's better, it's by like a very small margin.
well, luckily there are much better bosses as we move forward. Do you guys have anything else you want to say about that boss fight or about the Shivering Mountains before we move on? All right,
No.
on to Beastalk Away, one of the most aesthetically pleasing levels in the game, in my opinion. I'm just a sucker for like large, lush flora and like levels and stuff.
It's
Did you
definitely
guys have any
colorful.
strong opinions about the aesthetic of this one?
It's pretty to look at, but it's also, to me, it just looks like another forest, which we've already kind of done. But the colors are nice. I'll give it that. I thought this level was a lot more tedious than some of the other ones.
Mm-hmm. This is where I started to hit that wall of like, wait a second, I don't remember this level, therefore it's not fun.
This level, I think, was harder to move around than the last level. The last level wasn't particularly easy to move around, but was I think it was more linear than pretty much any other level.
I'd say so. So like the first level, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you pretty much just go in a straight line because I mean you're going downhill and stuff, so there's
Yeah.
no real backtracking or semi-vertical backtracking. But this level is just a little bit harder to traverse because there's more verticality to it, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But there are points where I would jump for something because I thought I needed to jump there, and it would just be a collectible or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be like, time for me to go back to the bottom and redo this. And this is just on me, but like the flowers, you have to ground pound the flowers and then spin on them. There was one point where I was just getting like bombarded by enemies, and I was trying desperately to like spin up, and they just kept on like coming and slapping me. And it's like in isolation, these are little things, but at this point, we're like 4 hours into the game, and I hadn't been having fun, and these little issues kept happening. And so by this point, I was like, "Dear God, please stop!" I remember like yelling, like Larkin was like half asleep on the couch, and I was like, "Stop! Stop! Stop!" And I woke her up. So this level is really the beginning of my real like frustration with this game.
The flowers were a big part of the tedious factor that I was just talking about, because there are a lot of sections that involve grabbing an enemy, going to a flower, spinning up so you can go up 3 feet, and then jump to a ladder. And if you fall down, you have to find another enemy, knock it out, go to the flower, spin it around, go up 3 feet, and climb the ladder again. And they, even if you don't fall down, they do that in this level a fair bit. And I think this is probably the point when I was starting to realize this is getting a little bit tedious.
Yeah, the idea of like using the enemies and like using your special moves to like manipulate the environment so that you can progress is really interesting. But like specifically grabbing them and spinning them was interesting for the first like level or two that had happened.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. And then it just kept going and kept going and kept going. And the reality is Wario just doesn't have that many moves, and you don't get any new moves as you play. And so you just have to keep doing the same motions over and over again for the platforming to be like interesting, because otherwise it would just, be a straight line, just like run and jump. But yeah, the flowers are definitely really tedious, and having to redo things over and over again is definitely really tedious in this level. Joe, do you want to try to say something nice about this level?
They did introduce something that I did kind of like about this level. It was the flying little magnet enemies.
No.
Yay! I love those guys.
No.
Yeah, they're amazing.
Just a flying magnet. You pick them
Ryder,
up,
you're
throw
wrong.
them at a wall.
We're not going to let you talk about it.
And then you can use them as a platform. It's such a neat mechanic.
They're okay in this level.
It's the only level they're in.
There.
The only level they're in.
No, they're not. They're in another level, but they're reskinned.
Yeah, there's a
Yeah, those are different enemies, and those enemies are bad. We don't like
Okay.
those enemies.
Okay.
The magnets are amazing, though.
Okay, I'm okay with that. It's just this whole enemy class is like skin is ruined for me. But I'll leave it at that. This one is okay. This is okay.
Speaking of,
I really liked
enemies, the tree enemies in this level that have the little acorns that you have to ground pound and knock the acorns down, ground pound again, because you can't grab the acorns from any side. So you have to make them shake and fall to a side that you pick up. You pick them up, throw them at the tree to open its face. Then you do it again because that wasn't good enough. And then you repeat like 4 times. I don't like these.
You forgot the part. You forgot the part where you have to get lucky and try to pick it up from the right side, because it arbitrarily decides whether or not it will hurt you, even if you have in fact ground pounded.
It's so finicky.
Yeah, I remember that part getting extremely frustrated. I think I died like 4 times to acorns, just because I I think I was getting like hit by enemies while I was also like accidentally walking into the acorns.
Mhm.
And at one point I remember like jumping at ground pound, ground pound, ground pound, ground pound until eventually one of them was turned the right direction. And I'm not trying to steal your thunder, but yeah, they'll either despawn or if you don't do it fast enough, the flower will like close back up
Mhm.
and you have to do it again.
Yeah.
And thankfully, I don't think it's health. It doesn't regain health or anything like that, but the flower will close, and it's enough to stall you another 30 seconds. And that's frustrating enough on its own.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but by the way, for the record, this enemy's name is Tree Freak. Like, they really just don't try with some of these names.
Yeah.
Isn't this another enemy like the... Hold on. Angler Mangler, a name they did try on. Isn't this another one of those where it just like is fine the first time, even if it's less fine, and then it appears again, and then maybe even again, and you're just like sick of it by the end? Yeah.
Yeah, and there's like
3 times.
they didn't even bother to make its character model big enough to fit the freaking gaps.
Yeah, so it's just giant invisible walls.
I was like, Wario, just walk past him. Like, why are you gonna stand here and fight?
I need to beat the money out of this tree. I can't
I
bring
guess
myself
so.
to go on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't like that boss. Little mini boss.
Are you going to talk about the boss now?
Sure. Speaking of another terrible enemy.
All right. Okay, so this the boss of this level is called Spider Radicus. I'm not smart enough to know what that name means, but it's Joe said he didn't like it. I liked this boss. The general idea is there's a giant spider in the middle of a big web, and you're on like a ring on the outside of it, and it shoots out like different web-based attacks and like also like ground poundy things. But sometimes it'll shoot out like a glue ball. If you grab onto that, you can jump on top of it and like ground pound it when it pulls it back in. I don't know. It was really simple. It was really repetitive, but it reminded me of like of all the bosses, this one's the one that reminded me most of like a Mario boss, like a Mario Galaxy kind of boss, is what it felt like to me. And Mario bosses are good, so it made it feel good to me. Ryder, what do you think of the boss?
I like this boss. It made me think of a Donkey Kong Country boss.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite bosses in this game are the ones that require something a little bit more than just punching them. And that's kind of what Donkey Kong Country is. Most of the time, Donkey Kong Country is not just jumping on something's head. There's a little bit more flair to it. This kind of felt like it. And there's even a Donkey Kong Country 3 boss that looks almost identical to this as far as coloration, and that might be me misremembering. But all I'd say, I really like this. I thought this was a lot more fun than the last one because it had something that was mechanically a little bit different from what we've previously seen. But it was very clear what I needed to do, and I could like carry through on it consistently. Like I didn't get frustrated at any point. Like he got faster. I would take damage a little bit more if I messed up on my end. But I knew what I was supposed to do from the beginning, was able to follow through with it, and ended up actually thoroughly enjoying this boss fight.
So, Joe, why do you hate things that are fun?
It was too repetitive. I don't know if it did ever happen, but I don't think I ever saw it do a ground pound move. The entire boss fight was dodge lasers, get on the glue ball, throw the enemy, run back, dodge lasers, get on the glue ball, throw the enemy, dodge lasers, get on the glue ball, throw him, and I was done. It didn't stand out to me at all.
I thought that after you attacked it and like did your mad move on it and dealt damage, that it did a thing that would send out like waves along the ground that you had to jump over. Am I conflating a different boss? I don't know.
I'm watching a long play right now, and it did do that. But I guess John will show us in the gameplay that I recorded if it actually did that or not. But I don't remember.
Yeah, I'm not like defending this as like the best boss ever, but I liked this boss. It was better than Battletoad. Like I had a good time with it. It was a really big spider that was wearing. Hold on, it was wearing an outfit
like a band-aid or something.
Yeah, it's wearing like combat gear. It's got on it's got on like military boots and like a helmet, and it's got 8 legs and some bandages. You know, it's a fancy spider.
Okay. You can have that. I didn't like it.
All right, thank you. I feel personally fulfilled now, actually. And then that brings us to our kind of big boss for World 3, and his name is Red Brief J. And I remember, so I borrowed this game from my cousins a lot when I was a kid. I remember reading through the manuals, because I'm not going to do the joke where, like, I'm old and you're young and you don't know what manuals are. But anyway, I do miss, like, the nice color manuals they used to have in games. But it just showed you what all the bosses were in the manual. And one of them said, and it was, like, written in Wario's perspective. And so it just said something along the lines of, like, oh, man, he doesn't deserve to be named after the garments he wears or something like that. He's called Red Brief because he wears a red Speedo. And... yeah. I don't know. That's all there is to it, and it's a dumb joke. But I remember as a kid thinking it was really funny. So I guess they did their job.
Just out of curiosity, I'm also looking at the wiki right now, and Red Brief J. I was looking at the translations in different languages, and the original Japanese version, his name is Red Brief Johnny. So that got me curious. How many of these names did they actually change? Like how much variation was there? And Excitement Central was called Excitement World in Japan. Spooktastic World was called Throbbing World in Japan. And Thrillville was called Pitapat World. So
I like that one.
That's a real short little aside right there, but we were curious about that earlier, if that had any effect. I don't think it had as much of an effect as we would have thought. I think the English translation actually did a better job not calling Throbbing World. So anyways, Red Brief J.
Yeah, not to just like tell childhood stories, but I remember this was the wall. I think I got to this guy one time, and I never beat him as a kid. Mm-hmm. And it's because kids are dumb and impatient, and I was dumb and impatient. And all you have to do to beat this guy is run in circles and dodge until he does an attack that makes him almost hurt himself, and then you just ground pound. Yeah. How long did it take you guys to figure out like this boss?
Longer than it should have, because I was just ground pounding over and over.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's not hurting him. Like he's on the little chain part. Like, why isn't it hurting him? And then at one point, I just started running, because that's usually what happened when I didn't understand what to do. I would just do loops, and then he ended up, like teetering on the edge, and I was like, now. I still died a lot to it because I was just getting overzealous and like trying to I was getting greedy, going for ground pound when I shouldn't have, or like one time I remember going for a ground pound because he was teetering. And he recovered like right as I was doing like a ground pound, and then he came like attacked me and killed me. So I didn't have a lot of trouble with this boss. I also didn't really care for this boss, but it did take me a sec to figure out kind of what was happening, because like I said, I thought like, I'll just ground pound and it'll deal damage, and it didn't work like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think I'm starting to realize I just don't much care for bosses where I can't do anything other than wait until they allow me to do something. And also, I think the next world is when I like stop remembering everything about this game. So I did at least know what to do about this boss, and I knew I needed to wait for him to get to the edge where he was teetering. But I was running around trying to see if there was anything I could do to make it go faster, like hitting him at certain times, or like trying to do something to trigger him doing his dash move where he would like get to the point where he'd teeter on the edge. And no, you just have to run away for him and hope he does that move. I think aesthetically he looks amazing, but other than that, I really didn't much care for this boss.
Yeah, there's something very appealing about a handsome moblin in a red Speedo strutting around a lava pit. There's just something there.
So, on the subject of Red Brief J, just very briefly before we go on. So, just again with these names, his name is Red Brief Johnny in Japanese. His name is Maximum in Italian. In German, his name is Macho, which makes sense. It's Macho Taurus, actually, so that's pretty explanatory. But in Italian, it's Toro di Lava, which just means lava bull. I don't know. Red Brief Johnny, Maximum Macho Bull. Okay, those all whatever, and then Lava Bull.
I like it.
Also, just like, okay, last little thing. I didn't even think about this.
You're good.
It's wacky in general, so a lot of things I just didn't think about, or I would think about just briefly and kind of move on. But this makes even less sense than like the rest of it. Why is this bull just sitting out in the middle of this like lava filled thing, and there's like mountains with snow in the background? And
those are the Shivering Mountains, Ryder. We just talked about those.
I guess so, but why?
Like, it is all connected. We just didn't see it.
The whole world is interconnected.
I guess so. I need to catch up on the Wario World lore, apparently. I'll let it go. But I just was looking at the little thumbnail and... Anywho, let's keep going.
Well, I just wanted to comment, like, real quick. I'm pretty sure it's established in the opening cutscene that all of this, enemies and, like, locations included, are just the results of the Dark Crystal. And that's not called the Dark Crystal. The Black Crystal, the Black Gem. Mm-hmm. Just, like, turning all of Wario's like treasures and stuff into monsters and just like weird stuff. So I don't know. I see your point, but I wouldn't think too hard about that.
And like I tried to ignore a lot because of that. But that just seems like a cheap excuse for the creators again to just do whatever they want. And like
heaven forbid creators do whatever they want.
That can be fun.
They need to follow Ryder's guidelines. Ryder, you're fine. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You're good. I think that the wackiness is fun and fun, but it's just again, none of it fits together, and that's why I have a problem with it. But we can keep going though. I'll have Joe about later for sure.
That's why they turn.
Joe,
into money.
You want to say something?
I was going to say that's why they turn into money, because the Black Crystal turned his money into repetitive enemies. That's why they're repetitive, because they're all like quarters and dollar coins.
Yeah, this is like one of the only games that explains why enemies turn into items when they die. Honestly, like they really thought this through.
Good game design.
Anyway, so we get to World 4. World 4 is called Sparkle Land. Once again, the name means nothing. The first level is like a mansion with mirrors that is technically in a desert, I guess. And then the second level is a desert. As far as enemies go, we just have weird, arbitrary reskins again. There are some weird ones though. There are these like magicians that are like bound in chains. I ran past the first few and I was like, wow, these are dumb enemies. But then I had to fight one and I like punched it and the chains fell off and then it kind of like messed me up after that. So I don't know, those are kind of interesting. And then like the Ninja Crows also were like weirdly interesting.
So the Ninja Crows were the enemy that I like the most in this area. But this isn't really a criticism, but I realize like they're extremely, extremely similar to the in Bowser's World on Super Mario Odyssey. There are the birds where you can like peck, like extend the beak. Like if you watch like their movements and stuff, and even like their design, they look pretty similar to them. So I wonder. I brought this up earlier. I wondered how much Super Mario Odyssey pulled from this game, and this game is obscure enough to where like most people probably just wouldn't notice it, and things that I'd never noticed because I never played this game. But playing it now, I can't help but think like, I wonder if there is any inspiration taken, or maybe even if there were team members or level designers or something like that worked on this game that ended up working on Super Mario Odyssey down the line. And, things led into that.
So Mario Odyssey is the bad game that reuse assets, not this one.
You said it's what?
So Mario Odyssey is the bad game that reused assets, not this one.
Yeah, you're right. That's a take for sure.
I wouldn't say or like assume. What am I trying to say? I wouldn't follow your train of thought that like the people that worked on this game or the people that worked on Mario Odyssey might have like taken ideas from this game, but I definitely do like see the resemblance in the enemies, and I definitely had like a very similar thought. Honestly, it's just the best way for a bird to be designed, just like no wings and long beak. Like honestly, that's just the best way it can possibly be.
I get that. And I'm not claiming like plagiarism or anything. It's just they're made by the same company, at least same parent company. Yeah. So it's just one of those things where I wonder if someone might have been working on this game, 19, 18 years ago, and then ended up working on that Super Mario Odyssey team 15 years later, and maybe some ideas carried over.
Someone on this game was really passionate about it, and they had a chance in Mario Odyssey to design a new enemy, and they were like, "Darn it, I'm bringing it back. This is its time to shine."
They just had a sticky note. They had a sticky note at the front of their binder every day, and they just looked at it, and they were like, "Today's the day. I got to make it happen."
I mean, it's a thing that happens. This is a little like more 1-to-1, but like I've talked about it, I guess, in like our Mass Effect video. But KOTOR, BioWare made that, and a lot of their ideas were reused and revised in Mass Effect, or things that they had to scrap ended up coming back because there was tie over, and of course it was BioWare and BioWare on KOTOR and Mass Effect versus this is like Treasure, who is kind of subsidized by Nintendo. But it's one of those things where, like, I don't question it. The gaming industry, I don't think, especially like in Japan, is as big as maybe we would think. So there's going to be, I'm sure, some overlap. Maybe just one developer, and maybe I'm just overstepping here. I'm just completely wrong. But it seems very close to me. It doesn't seem completely out of the realm of possibility that there would have been someone that looked and said, "I like that idea. I worked on this game. Maybe I'm going to try and work it in some way." Because they are mechanically different. It's just like the design and even like the movements look similar enough that it's hard for me not to notice.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I follow that train of thought. Yeah, unless you guys want to talk about the Churin, which are like the mice on those wheels. Actually, before we talk about the terrible mini-boss named Terrible Portrait, there's portions of this level where you can't see Wario, and instead the backdrop is a mirror. You can only see the mirror image of him, so you have to sort of move relative only to like being able to see that. Like or not like? What do we think about that?
I think you can move the camera up. You can kind of see it. That's what I did.
Sometimes you can kind of see him, but not always.
I don't know. I guess it didn't bother me enough to like really stand out.
I didn't hate it.
Didn't hate it. 2 thumbs up.
That's as much as you can hope for me on this.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I thought it was fine. I thought it had like the potential to be really interesting. And they try to do some interesting things with it, like
they had the enemies that were invisible in the main ground and that you could only see like in the mirror. Mm-hmm. That was kind of cool.
Those for sure. Yeah, and then there are also like paths that you just wouldn't know existed if you didn't see them in the reflection, and then you'd like find secrets. Like, it was kind of a cool mechanic. I don't know, it just didn't pay off in the way that I thought it would whenever it was set up like at the very beginning.
There also weren't a lot of sections that used it at all. I can't give you like a percentage or like a time, of how much the level contained this, but considering it's called Mirror Mansion, I expected much more. And I don't know if I'm happy or bummed about it, because part of me is like, well, thank God, because I didn't want to play with my controls half reversed, having to look at like the back of the screen for 30, 45 minutes. But at the same time, I hate how underutilized it was, because there were very few sections that used it, and those that did use it, I don't think were very well fleshed out at all. Most of the time, it was just me trying to jump on a box to get to the next section, or see a trapdoor to jump through, and then I was pretty much done with the mirror. So I think there was only one extended section that took maybe a minute for me to run through, and that was kind of fun, because I was having to climb and run around things, but there still wasn't a whole lot really there with it.
Yeah, I agree in general. Cool idea, could have been fleshed out to be a really cool level, but it just was more Wario World, except sometimes in reverse.
I think the only other thing I could say about this level is the mini boss is it's like 3 portraits, where there's one portrait that has like a weird stitched looking face or whatever, and then 2 more portraits on the wall that have arms sticking out, and they're like throwing different spells at you, and you basically just kind of wait until the guy spawns another barrel snowman head guy, and you use that to attack his hands.
Yeah, it's weird. He has the same like fight strategy as the Angler Mangler, where it's just dodge attacks, grab the literally exact same enemy, like grab the snowman enemy, and then like use it to hit him.
I do think he looks cool.
I don't know.
I just wish there was.
He does look cool. Yeah. I don't. His name is Terrible Portrait. Not a fun boss, and it does the same thing all the other ones do, where you fight him like 2 or 3 times, and it just gives more health, and then it's just not fun by the end of it. But you know, better than the tree. I'm gonna say that better than the tree.
And there are no crystal entities in this level.
Oh, there's no crystal entities in this level.
Yeah,
very strange for the Mirror Mansion.
Yeah.
Yeah, this level is definitely like I preferred this level out of the 2 in Sparkle Land, if that is worth anything. And it has probably my second favorite boss in this second half of the game, which is Luigi. It's a weird green zombie magician who just has Luigi's proportions, like the same nose, the same height, the same like build, and it was very weird. And I don't know if I said this, he's also green, like just his skin is green. The way he works mechanically is you like punch him, and then he's like, oh crap, I gotta run away, and he runs, and then like these 3 cups fall down, and it does like the street magician kind of like swirling the cups around, and you have to figure out which one he's in. I thought that was novel enough to be interesting, and I thought that the fight was short enough and that the cups moved fast enough, like gradually, that it was like engaging and it didn't overstay its welcome. Ryder, what do you think about this guy?
I liked it for the most part. During like the last spins, it was moving so fast, I just could not keep up. And I was adamant. I was like, it's the one on the left. Like I know for a fact this time. And then I'd check, and like he wouldn't be there. And I don't know how much of that is aging eyes, and me just like looking at the computer screen for work for as long as I've had to do, and just I don't want to be a grandma here, but burning my eyes out of socket from playing video games, TV, everything else in my life. I don't know how much of it was me or how much of it was the game, but I think it's safe for me to say that it was moving a little too fast at the end to be consistent, for me to actually be able to watch and play the game and be like, it was that one. It didn't hamper me from like finishing it or like having like a fun time anyway, because regardless if it was moving too fast or not for me to see, I still had a 1 3/3 chance to find him. So I think I found him anyway, like my second time. 1/3 chance rather.
I was like
1 3/3. That would be like 100.
Isn't that just 100%?
Yeah. So I had a 33% chance, or 1/3 chance rather, of finding him, and it didn't take too long because I think I just had to redo like one more spin. But that's really my only negative thing that I have to say about it. Other than that, I like the idea of it, and it was a pretty fun boss fight. I don't remember being like overwhelmed by enemies or anything. It wasn't, very hard to complete, and kind of staying on the trend that I said earlier, it was unique. I got the concept and was able to kind of follow through with it easily enough.
And Joe, I want to hear what you have to say, but I wanted to comment, Ryder. I also like the first time that the last cup exchange happened, where it was just like crazy fast. I thought it was ridiculous, and as well. And the second time, so I messed it up, and then the second time I thought I had it, and I chose the right one, but I'm not convinced that I didn't just like get lucky. Like I think I followed it, but it was moving really fast, so I could have just gotten lucky. And Joe's over here like
I'm a
I can
gamer.
see time and space shredding before me.
I hit it every time. I was confident every time.
Perfect score.
Yeah,
I
baby.
think you got lucky.
Okay. Maybe so. Maybe I got lucky. Did he hide inside the cup after you hit it every time for you guys?
Yeah, so there's a spriteling at the end who's like, by the way, this character's name is Mean MC. Ryder, if you wouldn't mind, will you look up the like other names and other languages for this guy? I'm just
It
curious.
wasn't actually Luigi.
Um, yeah, there's a spriteling that's like Mean MC is a coward. Even if you find him, he'll try to hide from you, and so you just have to like hit the cup again to make him fall out.
Yeah. I read that. I just wasn't expecting him to do it every time.
Yeah, it got old a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I liked this boss.
Or what-
I thought it was fun. I enjoyed it. It didn't last too long. Like, it didn't overstay its welcome for me.
Mhm.
I'm going to let Ryder say what he has to say. He looks like he has something to say about the names of the boss.
I'm having to remember my German a little bit here. So let me just go from the top. His name in Japanese is Ujikuruman, which means. Let me rewind. It's from corruption of and man. Ojikuru
Okay.
means to be frightened of, so the frightened man, I guess, is
Okay.
the idea there.
He does kind of cower around.
In French, it's Grand Maurice, Great Maurice. In German, it's Fisa Falschspieler, which means FISA, whatever that means. Honestly, I don't remember that. I'm sorry, my 3 or 4 German professors. But Falschspieler means the false player. So that's self-explanatory enough. I kind of like that.
Yeah.
And then Italian is Mago Fifas, which means wizard fear, wizard fears, the fear wizard, I guess.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Which is it's really interesting because this is one of the few that I've looked at that there's like a different name for each of them that's kind of derivative of the language that it's from. So this is kind of cool because the Mean MC, it's not like Red Brief Johnny, Red Brief Jay, where it's pretty he's wearing red briefs. His name is Johnny, I guess. But like this is the Ojikuruman, like he doesn't have a name. So in Japanese he's just the frightened man. So in English he's the Mean MC. Great Maurice, whatever. I guess in France they're like, he looks kind of cool. The false player, that's kind of cool, and then the fear wizard. I kind of like these names, except for Great Maurice. I guess that's kind of funny, but
That's my favorite one.
it doesn't fit the theme that we have going on
I
here.
just named him Maurice.
Maurice,
They just decided.
Maurice, I guess. They looked at him and they're like, I hate my brother-in-law Maurice, so let's name him Maurice.
Yeah. That's great.
Thank you, Ryder.
Yeah.
All right, that brings us to our last full level of the game. Normally I say pecan, but for the purposes of the name of this level, we're going to call it Pecan Sands. I feel like that's the way it was intended to be said, because otherwise there's not any kind of like assonance or anything like that.
Yeah.
Is it assonance? Is that the right word? It's like alliteration, but with vowels. All right,
Yes.
We all have degrees, everybody. So in this level, we have mummy dinosaurs, flying spades. Ryder, here's your chance to talk about.
This is the worst level in the game. I hate this level. I hate this game. That is all. I'll stop there.
Sounds kind of cool.
Did you want to talk about the spades?
They suck. So let me get comfortable.
Oh, get comfortable.
The spades are a reskin of the monstrous magnets.
Correct.
They're called just flying spades.
Mhm.
In the beanstalk way, we have those, and you can take them and throw them, and they act as a new platform. Fun, fine, and dandy. Well, at the very end of the section, there's a few more times where the flying spades come up, but in Pecan Sands, I'll say that, Pecan Sands, flying spades show up, and you're going up a pyramid, kind of just in a big circle. A few points you kind of zigzag back and forth. More or less, you're just kind of going up to the top of this pyramid. At the very end of the level, there is a straight vertical section, and you cannot get up it without using these flying spades. I don't know if the rest of you, the other two of you, I guess, had the same problems that I did with this. But the flying spades in this section gave me fits. You have to go up vertically. I'd say that there is 1, 2, 3 jumps. So it's about 3 jumps total to get to the top of this area. And like I said, you have to use the spades. You take them and throw them, and that allows for you to get one platform up. So that's 1 jump. Then you have to have another to throw in front of you to have a second platform up to allow you to jump to the top. So it's 3 jumps total. The problem is that there are 3 spades flying around, and they are shocking you, and you have to stun them, get them on the ground, to throw them, to pin them into the wall. And if you're not fast enough, they'll despawn. And if you goof up a little bit, you could actually throw one of the spades into another, because they'll go for like dive bomb attacks and try to hit you. And so you can end up killing your only method of getting up this little vertical area and have to restart again. It probably took me 10 minutes, no joke, to get to the top of this. And I got to the very top of this pyramid. I'm jumping ahead here. But I got to the very top of this pyramid and was missing a crystal. 1 crystal. So I had to jump on the balloons and go all the way back to the beginning, because a lot of this map is inaccessible once you get past a certain like threshold. And if it's not inaccessible, it's just a huge pain to try and go back over a gap. So I had to take the balloons all the way back to the beginning to try and find another mini level to get another crystal, which meant that by the time I got my next crystal and got all the way back to the end of the level, I had to do the flying spades again. So by the time I finish this game, you'll hear my written review that was written, like literally I finished the game and just started hammering it out. You'll hear that frustration kind of voiced in full. But this is the level, just to kind of summarize it in full, that made me hate this game. Up until this point, I disliked this game. After finishing this level, I was like, this is a bad game. This is just a bad game. And I'll go into it at like a couple of different points throughout when we're talking about this level. But I'll let someone else take it. I don't know if the rest of you had the same problems that I did with the flying spades, but I was very frustrated with that, along with just other things in this level in general.
Joe?
I did not have as much of a problem with the flying spades, but I did reach the end of the level and I needed a crystal. So I went all the way back, and the first door that I found, I don't know if you guys went into this mini area, but there's one that's just like, I almost want to call it a maze because it looks like a block maze, but it's like a linear path. But it's super, super long, and you have to go, like, it's at least spent me, I at least took like 10 minutes on this level just trying to get to the crystal.
It was the hardest platforming section in any game I've ever played in my life.
Yes, it was that. I assume Ryder is on the same one.
Awful.
I spent a really long time on this mini level.
It's the very last mini level in the entire game, and if you were still alive, the person who made this mini level, I hope that you stub your toe tomorrow morning. That's as nice as I can be right now. I was going to say something worse, but this is a kid's show.
Ryder, please stop doing that with your mic.
I was at least determined enough that I didn't want to find another mini level, so I was going to finish this one, and I spent a really long time on it. I did not enjoy that, but I liked the idea of the rest of the level. It's a cool pyramid.
I like
going
the
around
idea.
it. And also,
Do you like the level, Joe, or do you like the idea of the level? Please clarify.
Yes. There's one of our
Okay.
old bosses showed up in this level too. The boss from level 2, I think. The sand pit.
Which one?
Whatchamaguy.
Oh yeah, just like kind of like weaker casual versions of those.
Yeah, he showed up.
I thought that was fun,
Yeah,
them showing back up.
I enjoyed that part. But I don't know. I like the idea of the level. I didn't like it that much.
Yeah, I found it unnecessarily difficult to traverse and like figure out where you were. 'Cause again, you don't have 3D camera control, and when you're in like the little puzzle sections, you can move it like on 8 different like fields of view. But whenever you're just in the overworld, you can only sort of scoot it further to the left or further to the right, and then like up. I think that's really all the control that you have. I didn't have as much trouble as Ryder did with the spades. I definitely think that they're flawed. Like they are flawed in design because, first of all, this was my fault. I was like jumping and then throwing them, and then I like couldn't jump up to the platform because they were like too high. And I was like, okay, well that took me a little bit of time. And then once I figured that out, I would chunk them, and then like Ryder talked about, they would respawn way too fast, and then I would accidentally like kill one when trying to like I would kill 2 of them when I was trying to like throw it into the wall, and it was kind of a pain. It didn't take me 10 minutes. It took me like 45 seconds, but like it was a pain. And then as far as oh yeah, go ahead.
I feel like I owe it to you guys. I was going to hold off on this, but at this point, this is where it really became relevant. How many hearts did you guys end the game with?
6.5, I think.
Yeah, 6 or 6.5. I really stopped trying with the collectibles after World 2.
I still have 4. So this is why it was even more frustrating than it already would have been. I think that I still would have been frustrated. I don't think it would have taken me as long. But the problem was I was dying and having to restart. And at a couple of points, I like fell off the map and stuff. And you get sent to purgatory, which gets worse and worse. I can't remember what they call it. But by this point in the game, it was unbearable. At the beginning, I was just like, it's a little annoying. You just kind of run and punch the box. But by the time you're here, when you fall off the map, which happens a lot on this level for me, you're getting chased by these ghost rhinoceri thingies, and there's thin platforming sections like bricks that elevate you out of the water. And if you're hitting water, you're just kind of like skimming on top, losing coins. And I don't know. It was just extremely hard to control and get myself back on it. So things had just kind of compounded. And the fact that I didn't have enough hearts, I think was really at like the core of it, was what was making me so frustrated, because I was just constantly having to restart. And like I said, I ended the midway portion after Wonky Circus. I had like 8,000 coins. Finished this game with like 1,500. So I was just burning through them. And I think if I would have had another like 2 hearts, that really would have helped. But I didn't feel like replaying levels at the beginning. Back when it was just, I don't want to do it. By the time I was at the end, I was like, this is actually annoying right now. It was doable because I finished the game. But I don't think that's necessarily bad game design. But it definitely hampered my enjoyment, having less hearts than I otherwise could have had.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I definitely died more, especially in this 4th world, than earlier in the game. And part of that was because I wasn't being as careful, because I was just kind of like plowing my way through the game. But I mean, part of it was it does get, I don't want to say it gets harder, but you take more damage as you go, just because there's more things that deal damage to you. Like, so I see what you're saying. And we talked about it a little bit earlier, but like, the way health is upgraded in this game is like kind of cool, but it's also kind of weird. So I definitely understand why you didn't bother to like upgrade it at all.
I think I'm not gonna say this would have been better, but I think there would have been like thresholds just along the game, instead of saying you have to get all of them from one level to get another heart. Instead of being, if they would have been like you have to get 4 just from any level to get another heart, and then just make it out of the whatever 36 or however many artifacts there are. I don't know how many there are, but just have like thresholds. So you hit 4 and you'll get a heart. Hit 8, you'll get a heart. Hit 12, rather than have to complete a level. Because again, I'm not a completionist, and I don't necessarily feel like I was punished for not going back and redoing it. But it definitely made the experience less enjoyable. And if you're making a video game, I think as a developer, that is not what you want to do. Because the challenge didn't feel rewarding. It just felt frustrating throughout pretty much the game. Like every level subsequently got a little more frustrating for me personally.
Yeah.
Yeah, all that makes sense. Well, to say something positive about this level, I liked what they call the big scorpers, which are just like these scorpion tails that were sticking out of the sand, kind of like big snakes. And if you ground pound the ground, then the scorpions like pop out of the sand. I don't know. I thought that was cute. I like the small amounts of environmental interaction that this game offers, and that was one of the instances that I thought was interesting.
Well, Kurt, did you do the massive platforming section?
So I'm not sure specifically what one you're talking about.
You
I
probably
definitely what?
You probably didn't.
So you
So-
would remember it if you played it. It was awful.
I definitely got to the end of the level, and I only had like 3 crystals, and I was like, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay. And so I took the thing back, and there was one that I couldn't figure out, but it wasn't a platforming one. It was with the arrow blocks that move around when you hit them.
Mm-hmm.
And I went into that the first time through, and I just like left it, and I was like, whatever, I can't figure that out. I'll find the others, I'm sure. And then on the second path back around, I couldn't actually find some of the doors, so it wasn't a matter of like not being able to do it. I just genuinely couldn't find, and so I went back to that one, and I just sat there for like 10 or 15 minutes, and just was like, let me try every like permutation of this puzzle to make it happen. There was. Did it have like little cloud platforms that disappeared?
There were a few.
2.
Was it like a straight line with just like a bunch of small blocks that you just had to hop like varying distances, and then there was like some little cloud? Yeah, I did that one. It's like took me like 2 or 3 tries.
Wait, what? The one that you're talking about, was it like a straight line, pretty much?
Yeah,
No.
not that one.
No.
This one, you're having to do like right turns, and like it was
It's massive.
miserable. And
Yeah, I must not have done that. I don't remember.
There were
And
a
there
lot
was-
of sharp turns. There were spike balls that spun around. There was a point where you had to go like up vertically in a maze and then do more platforming above it. And if you
Go
fall
watch
off,
a playthrough of it.
yeah.
It's the very last mini level in the game, and
What the heck?
it was
It
miserable.
was bad.
And it's one of those things. After I played the level through the second time, because I didn't have enough crystals, I got to that and I found it, and I was like, well, I need one more crystal. I'm not redoing this level, so time to do it. And it took probably 30 minutes. I don't know, Joe, you're better than me at platforming, so it probably didn't take you as long. But I was ready to pull out hair by the time I finished it, because any mistake is punished with a restart to the beginning.
Right.
It was actually miserable.
It took me a lot of tries. It was bad. And I was in the exact same boat as you. I needed one more crystal, and I wasn't going to do any more. I found that level.
Yeah, I feel like it was the game's way of like punishing you. It was like, you're a completionist. Like, all right, we're about to slap you with this, or you're
Stop it.
like trying to get the bare minimum. We're about to slap you with it. So
Mhm.
I don't know.
I actually kind of want to boot it up just to like see this. I'll probably just look up a YouTube video, but
You should boot it up and like just try to like, run through. I really think you should
Yeah.
just try to play through it like once or twice, just so you can understand how absolutely frustrating it is. Because I don't think watching a video would do it justice.
I'll keep that in mind. Anything else before we get to the boss?
John can
This
share some of
level's
my
up.
playthrough of it.
Oh yeah, I'll just watch it whenever it goes live.
Yeah,
Um,
Joseph, make sure you like clip that and like give it, if John's like doing this, like send it to him separately so that he can like overlay it over this conversation, because
Probably take
if
just
he
as long.
doesn't know what he's looking for, he like you just won't understand like how bad it is if you don't have it like right there in front of you.
Mhm.
This has got to be really bad for the way you guys are talking about it. That's awesome. So the boss of this level is Stone Cold Statue.
This boss goes too far
Like-
in the direction that I wanted it to go. Because I was complaining about bosses where you can't do anything, you wait for a cycle. This goes too far in the other direction. At all times, so this boss is just like a stone statue that bounces around on 9 different platforms, and he has a couple hands, 2 or 3 hands that come up. You can attack the hands, pick up the hands, throw them at the head. That's what you do. There's always a hand available for you, so you can always grab a hand, hit it at the boss, and you just do that 5 times. I don't even remember what his moves were.
The hardest part about this is just the first like 15 seconds. like just whenever he like because he does like a pound attack, right, and has like a wave or something that hurts.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's the only time where I think I took any damage was at the very beginning because I was just like standing right beside him and took damage like nearly immediately, and I was like, okay, that's how this is played, and then like never had any other trouble with it. But again, after coming off that last level, this was okay with me. This is what I want. I'm not complaining about it.
Yeah, I just really don't have anything else to say. Like, Joe, you described the mechanics, and that is, those were, in fact, the mechanics for this boss. And I don't know, I probably beat him faster than it took Ryder to climb up those flying spades. So, I mean, like, I don't know. It was just like an afterthought. It's just like, okay, that was a boss. Yeah.
I beat this like easy boss in under 15 minutes. So.
Well, I was mostly just making fun of you for taking that long, but yeah, it was really easy. I don't have anything to say about. Wait, hold on. Sorry, this boss's name is Iron Cider. Stone Cold Statue was the mini boss in the last level. That was the like Rubik's Cube kind of thing with like the rotating stone tower where you had to like punch it in his weak spot.
And that was easy enough. It was just, again, it's just like rubbing salt in the wound, you know? By the time I got to that point, it wasn't hard, but like the nose, like keeping me from attacking it. I was like, you're not even dealing damage to me right now. You're just making me very, very annoyed with you.
Yeah.
And that's, again, coming off the fact that I had to do the spades twice and I had to do the platforming section. I don't guess I had to do that, but I did the platforming section that took like 30 minutes. I think this level took me like an hour and a half to finish. Yeah. No joke.
Mm-hmm. Well, at least now we get to fight a good boss. Get to the big boss of World 4, and it's Captain Skull. Joe, I want to hear you say nice things.
I like this boss. I like his aesthetics. You're fighting him on a broken pirate ship that's in 2 separate pieces. You're fighting him across the 2 separate pieces. There's like a little blue spring thing that you can use to bounce from one side to the other. And the boss's attacks involve using his arm cannon, I think, to launch like bombs to one side of the map and lasers to the other side of the map. And your main goal, I think, for most of it is to go up and punch him. But there's also a point where you have to pick up barrels and hit them with them to stun him to the point where you can do a mad move on him. And I don't know, I had fun with this boss. I like the aesthetics, I like his moves, I thought it was fun to fight. There wasn't so much just waiting, but it also wasn't so easy that you just hit him and be done with it, like the last boss.
Yeah, it felt active. Like he had different attacks that were telegraphed in like different ways, and you would, so you're on 2 halves of the ships, but there's also, I don't know what you'd call them, like the scouting tower. That you could climb up. Yeah. So if you could see him, he's about to like shoot a big bomb that's gonna make the ship explode. But depending on if he's like at this angle or if he's like at this angle, you might hide somewhere different. And then I discovered this was an accident because I fell. But there's also like a bit of a land outside the ship that you can walk around on. I will say that I didn't know until watching a video of this fight to like sort of refresh myself that there were barrels to pick up.
Were you just using them as like cannonballs to?
I used the cannonballs the whole time, and so part of it was like, this is kind of tedious because I'm having to wait a long time, and sometimes the bombs explode too soon. But when I saw that, I was like, oh no, I was just making it harder on myself as I did in the Dynamite fight.
I don't know if he like destroys them at some point, but by the time I realized there were barrels to hit him with, there were only the 2 on the back half of the ship. I don't think there were any on the front half.
I think they get destroyed just by like Wario. If you can punch them, or if he hits them with his bombs away.
Maybe that's what happened. I didn't notice them until
accident.
Yeah, I didn't notice them until he had like 2 hits left, and I couldn't hit him anymore.
That's actually like so. I didn't dislike this boss fight. I liked it for the most part. I just had some issues with like the timing, specifically with the barrels, because I would like throw them and like miss him just slightly, or like I would like try to like jump to him and he would like jump as I was like finally like getting to him, it was just more me and, just not understanding his timing, not paying enough attention to it because, again, I think coming off the last level, I was just so frustrated that I think it killed most of the enjoyment I had from this. This is a nice cooldown after what I just experienced, but I don't think I could fully enjoy it because I was just so frustrated. But what I did notice and I liked was the barrels, what I used to actually kill him with. I think 4 out of his 5 skulls, I used the barrels. And I think on one of them, maybe his 4th, I actually used his bomb and threw it back at him. And I thought that was cool because it wasn't something that could just damage you. You could actually turn around and use it against him. So that was pretty nice. Not every boss had it, but the variability that some of these bosses had to fight them was kind of fun.
I did think of one thing negative to say, and that's the spring mechanic is really bad.
That's what was giving me issues really with the timing was trying to get the spring and actually get over there in time to attack him before he would jump again.
Yeah, because it's weird because it's not like Mario or Sonic where it's a physical spring that you land on and then it bounces you. It's just kind of some weird white circles that are kind of floating that kind of look like a spring, and then if you jump on them, they shoot you straight up, and then you can just sort of slowly fall at a diagonal, and it works, but it just feels very weird. But other than that, I really enjoyed this boss fight. I enjoyed the aesthetic. I like that it was a pirate kind of thing.
What was his
Wario
name?
has kind of a history with pirate villains. The boss's name?
Yeah.
It was Captain Skull.
Okay. I feel like it could have been more interesting because he's a robot skeleton pirate.
His
Was
name
he a robot?
I don't know. He has an arm cannon.
Yeah,
And
I
he has,
guess I didn't
and he
think
has
too
a
hard about
grappling
that.
hook.
Oh yeah.
Of course he has a grappling hook.
Yeah, you're right.
His
As
name
all
in
humans do.
Japanese is just Captain Skull. In French it's Captain Cannon. In German it's Capitan Schädel, which means Captain Skull. And in Italian his name is Pirata, which just means pirate. I love these the Italian names are so bad. They just he's just a pirate. Just any old pirate.
But yeah, I liked him. I don't know, that's all I have to say.
Yeah.
One more boss, guys. Are you guys ready?
Brings us to the
Alright.
least repetitive boss with the most unique moves in the entire game.
So, I don't know if we said this, but every time you beat a world or beat a big boss, you get a key. And you collect 4 keys, and there's a big chest sitting in the hub world. And for whatever reason, all 4 of the keys, the entirety of the keys, not just the end, but the entirety of the keys fit inside the keyhole. And once you collect them all, the chest pops open, and Black Jewel is what we're gonna go officially. It's called. Pops out, and this is the jewel from the beginning of the game that turned everything terrible. I don't know why it was locked in a chest. I don't know if it did it for its own protection. I don't know if it was one of those I fulfilled doing my bad things, time to rest, and Wario woke him up.
I was going to bring that up because at the beginning of the game it escapes a chest and then it traps Wario in this magic world or whatever, and then it's back in a chest.
Yeah. I don't know. I got nothing for you. It's very strange if you think about it. But yeah, so the Black Jewel flies up, and then all the worlds crumble around you, and I panicked for a second because I thought this was going to be some kind of I don't know, some kind of Zelda thing where you think you're doing something, you're fighting the big bad, and all of a sudden the world crumbles around you, and there's just another world, and I thought there was going to be a bunch of levels that we didn't know existed.
A world of light.
Yeah, but then it was oh no, we're just floating on a Kingdom Hearts platform, and we're doing a final boss fight, and everything is going to be okay. And like Joe mentioned, there's no variety in this boss fight. I don't know. I don't want to get ahead and influence your opinions, but there's 6 to 8 little spritlings trapped in crystals around in a circle, and you have to break them all free. And once you bust them all free, they hit the Black Jewel, which lets you pick them up and do a mad move and actually deal damage. And the only attack, as far as I'm aware, that the Black Jewel has to stop you is it like creates walls of fire that temporarily inconvenience you and prevents you from moving forward. Ryder, since I know how you feel, I want to hear what Joe says first.
So there's one thing good I can say about it. It actually
All right, go
limits
for it.
the spritlings that you free throughout the game, because each the boss has 8 hit points, one for each level in the game, and for each hit point you have to free the spritlings that you already freed, and then they fly around and they hit the boss. If you didn't free a spriteling from one of the levels, it will still be in its little box, but it will be in the little crystal, and it matches like World 1 is the first phase, or Level 1 is the first phase, Level 2 is the second phase, and so on and so forth. So that was kind of neat. But
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
It has 3 moves and 8 hit points. It can line up walls of fire. If it traps you in a wall, it will either shoot like trailing fire at you, or it'll do like the little ground pound move that every other boss in the game does. And then it lets up, and you can run around and free the little guys again. There's just no variety, and it increases its health and has fewer moves than most of the other bosses in the game. It's so uninteresting, and it's such a letdown, I guess, compared to
and I'm sure
everything else.
I'm sure it's on screen now, but like we can't stress how important it is that you know that it is quite literally a black gemstone with an eyeball and some tentacles coming out of it. And if you're thinking, that sounds kind of cool, you're being far too creative. You're being far too creative with it. It almost looks like a knockoff like Vati from like Zelda Four Swords, which is just like a black like bat with eyeballs and stuff. I don't know. It looks like that, but
it's not that interesting.
Like a freeware version of that. All right, Ryder, unload. What do you think?
I like this boss.
You know, I was so frustrated leading up to this part. This was still okay. Like, I will say I died probably more to this boss than any other boss in the game. But that's because I was just so ready for it to be over with. Mm-hmm. I was intentionally charging just at everything. And I was like, I don't care. Like, I had like 3,500 coins, so I was like, let's spit them out. Let's go. So I just intentionally was running, and if I die, I was like, 600 coins, who cares? I have another, 2,400 after this. Mm-hmm. I did get a little worried towards the end, though, because I had like 1,300 left, and I was like, I have 2 resets if I goof up after this. But it ended up working out. It was fine. So the design of the boss itself, just the physical appearance, that aside, this wouldn't have been an awful boss fight if it didn't have to go on for so long. Mm-hmm. I think that's just really my biggest problem, and that kind of also goes into the levels themselves. This isn't awful on its own. It was kind of fun, I guess. But the fact that it had 8, little health bars, and I had to go and hit each one of the spritlings, which were just spread so far apart. It's a very small map, but like when you're getting these firewalls put between you, it felt like, again, there wasn't enough really to do to give you damage. So it felt like they were doing this to try and make this boss fight seem more epic. This being the walls of fire, that they would split you, like kind of cut you off from the rest of the spritlings. And it really felt like they were only doing it to lengthen the boss fight and make it seem more epic than it was. And like I said, it wasn't particularly difficult. There was like an artificial difficulty created for me because I intentionally let my character die, just trying to speed up the process. I don't think it would have been a overall bad fight if it would have had maybe 5, health instead of 8, and if there was some type of second phase, I guess. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying another 5 health, but something that would have made it a little more of a threat. That maybe I wouldn't have had to like kill myself intentionally just to end it, rather than I might have actually been like, oh, I'm kind of on the ropes. I don't want to lose lives if I can help it.
Yeah, it didn't really
having like.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, like having like 2 phases and having like 4 health and then 4 health, and it would like change things up on the second 4. I think that would have been really cool.
I was
Go
going to
ahead,
say,
Joe.
it didn't really feel like the boss was fighting you. It felt like the boss was trying to hinder you from killing it faster. Its whole goal was to just put fire in your way, which the only way to kill the boss is to run around the map in a circle and free the little spritlings. So it really just felt like it was doing what it could to stop you, rather than actually fight you like the rest of the bosses in the game.
So this is I'm on the wiki, just kind of staring at the screen. Just my mind is numb at this point. But I saw this and I'm actually interested. What we were talking about actually happened in the Japanese version of the game. There was a second attack phase after its first 4 health points. That they took out of the American version, apparently, or that maybe just the international releases in general. But it says in the Japanese version, the Black Jewel has a second attack phase, blah blah blah, and it goes on to describe it a little bit. So maybe this is an example of them thinking like Westerners are too stupid. This game wasn't hard. I mean,
No.
I think again, this kind of it hampered my enjoyment by them rolling it back, which also it just makes me curious in general. I want to go back and look through the wiki and see were there other things, maybe some of the other complaints that we had, were actually a part of the Japanese version and they took them out for, international releases. It's mind blowing to me because this is something that I actually think would make it a better game. Again, I wasn't hurting for coins, and I don't think that 8 or 9-year-old me would have been hurting for coins either at this point in the game. I think I would have had more coins back then because I would have tried to put more effort into getting everything than I would now.
So join us next week when we talk about the first half of the Japanese version of Wario World.
But like looking at the wiki and stuff, it's Wario World bosses, so grain of salt. But it sounds kind of cool. Like it says it'll actually start charging at you on the ground, and says it spits out like a barrage of crates which contain like bombs and like garlic, which is health in this game. That's very strange that they were just like, I don't know, we should let them play this game, but we should totally just nerf the final boss encounter. Like, I don't know, that's very strange that they changed that.
Yeah, this is already significantly more interesting. It does like a pounding move and run up and hit it, and it starts to it has like cracked textures on it as you're fighting it.
Yeah, I know, it's kind of cool. That's very strange. I want to emphasize, I don't think this was a bad boss. I thought it was a little underwhelming for like a final boss, but I will say like the atmosphere was really cool. Like, everything else was in ruins. You're on like this like platform made out of light with this cool like pattern. Like Joe talked about, it's bringing back the spritlings from all the previous worlds. So like, you feel like you're interacting with something like
that you did.
Like pulling material from the game at large rather than just like something random. It's cool. It just is really repetitive and really simple. So at the end of the day, it is a little underwhelming, even if it's got some things going for it.
The variety of the boss fight matches the variety of the boss's appearance.
Anything else, guys, before we get to the ending?
I think that's all I had to say about it.
Okay, so you beat Black Jewel, and then there's like a fever dream of an end cutscene, and I wrote that down. I meant to like look it back up, but I think basically the world is just like completely white and like foggy, like there's just nothing anywhere, and Wario's just standing there, and his like eyes and mustache are twitching, and it's terrifying. And the spritlings come up, and they're like, "Wario, you saved us. We're gonna build." No, Ryder, you're shaking your head.
No, I'm shaking my head because of just everything that's just kind of led up to this.
Oh, okay.
The
spritlings are like, Wario, you saved us. Thank you, uber rich person, for saving us forest creatures. Now we're going to build you a new mansion. And then it shows you all the spritlings in the game. And like Joe mentioned earlier, the ones that you didn't save are still in boxes. And the ones that you did save are like free. I don't know why they don't let their friends out of boxes since they're there, but whatever. I'm not going to tell them how to live their lives.
It's the shame you, the player. It's
It's make you feel bad.
Yeah,
It's like, I'm
probably.
worried. You could have done something. But anyway, apparently there's. I had it pulled up a second ago, but I don't anymore. There's several endings depending on how many spritlings you save. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 endings. Yeah, there's 40 spritlings total. So if you rescue all 40, Wario gets just like a giant mansion that's made of like gold and gemstones, and there's just piles of treasure on the floor. If you get 31 to 39, which is what I ended up doing, I think I got 37 of them. You get basically the same thing. It's a big giant gold mansion, but there's not like piles of treasure everywhere. Ryder, how many did you save? What ending did you get?
I got like 32.
So
I realized because I got the golden ending.
Joe, I assume you got the gold ending too.
Yeah, I was missing 2.
Gotcha. So I'm looking at the other endings, and it's really funny. If you get less than 30, you get a silver ending, where it's just like ungrateful. He's like, I can't believe they built me something out of silver. If you get less than 20, it's all stone. It's like a big medieval castle, and he's like mad about that. If you get less than 10, then it's like a giant wooden fortress, basically. And then if you only save one of them, which I think you have to save the very first one, then he's just sitting on a throne in the middle of a forest with a campfire and a tent. And I think that's really funny.
Oh.
But all right, so we all got the same ending. I was surprised at the very end because I knew there were multiple endings. I was surprised that the spritlings were what determines the ending you got, because I just kind of assumed with all the money you were collecting that it was going to be like Luigi's Mansion, where it was like based on how much money you collected was like how you were able to like build your new mansion.
Yeah.
Nope. I don't know. Did you guys feel like you were rewarded for your efforts? Did it feel good to have the second best ending?
I thought about going back and saving them all because I knew, like, beforehand, one of the spritlings mentioned, like, oh, I wonder what will happen if you save all of us. So, like, before I even went into the final boss, I thought there might have been, like, a different reward or something at the end of the game. Or maybe because you were using the spritlings to fight the boss, I thought it might have made the boss easier somehow or something like that. I was probably giving the game too much credit.
That would have been cool.
But after I saw like what happened at the end of the game, I just went and looked up what happens if you get all the spritlings, and then I was like, that's not worth it. I'm not going to go back through the ice level again. I don't want to do that. So I just kind of.
I do not blame you. Yeah, I don't blame you. Yeah, the endings are basically the same. It's weird that the spritlings are of all the collectibles, the spritlings are the ones that like determine it.
So by the time I got to like the ending, it was just like a fever dream. I was just like, "What is happening?"
Yeah, it was.
I started playing at like 11 o'clock at night, thinking I'll be able to finish this in like 2 hours, 3 tops, and it was like 3:50 in the morning by the time I finished this section.
Oh my gosh! And
I was just so exhausted. And the dancing spritlings with the music playing, I just remember being like, I didn't think it was really happening. I remember looking over, and Larkin's asleep on the couch, and I was like, no one's going to believe me that this is happening. I finished that, and then, I think the credits roll before you actually get the ending of the game.
Yeah.
And, it's a common theme. I was just kind of disappointed in general. But looking at these right here, I think these are better endings. I'm much like the forest ending is so much better than any of the others.
We all got the least interesting ending.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, the silver ending is pretty much boring as well. But I mean, like, pretty much any of the better endings are pretty boring. There's no reason to do it other than to say that you did. There's some games that really reward like a more completionist ending. You get like a more full-length cutscene or a true ending of the game that maybe gives you a bit more background or lore or just more satisfying ending in general, maybe like emotionally. But this didn't have that because it's Wario, and I can't really fault the game for not like giving me some like big emotional like, oh yes, that I feel like I've earned this. But at the same time, I got like a 12-second, 15-second little snippet of him sitting in like a throne, bang, and that was it. So I don't know.
Yeah, it wasn't an exciting ending. But Ryder, you'll be happy to know that we have found a credit song that is worse than the one that was in Mass Effect. So there you go. I like
the fact that Mass Effect's ending had an amazing song. I can agree that this was bad.
I was tempted to like take my headphones off, but I was worried that I don't know. I was just like, no, I'm right here at the finish line. I just gotta like endure this and just. It was really bad. Just like look it up. It's really bad.
Speaking of the credits, they scrolled by really slowly and they ended really quickly. So I just went ahead and counted how many developers were on the game. There were only 35 developers, plus their special thanks team and their debug team, which I thought was kind of impressive, I guess.
It's a pretty small team.
Mm.
I mean, granted, games back then, like just in general, had much smaller teams than they do today. Like today, they're just huge productions, even if they're small games.
Incredibly huge.
But I was looking at the sales figures for this game, and I'm trying to find it again. It sold in Japan. It sold like 142,000 copies, and then in the United States, it sold 256,000, which is like almost double. It doesn't say. I don't know if this was released in Europe. It doesn't have Europe or Australian like sales figures, so I don't know.
It had an Italian
there's a link.
Translation.
Do what?
It had an Italian translation.
Oh, that's true. It must have
Italian and German, so and French. So I'm
trying to find how much. So in the wiki, there's also like Mario Golf Toadstool Tour like listed. I'm trying to find like how much it sold, and I'm not seeing it. I'm just curious how well Wario World sold relative to other, like.
I mean, Mario Kart Double Dash was something big at the time.
Well, like spin-off Mario titles, like a Mario Golf game. I think it would be more fair than like Mario Kart.
Just Luigi's Mansion would I think be a fair reference.
Well, that was a launch title, so not really. I don't know. I'm not trying to like make this a big deal. I just wonder if it sold well, like relative.
Luigi's Mansion. I mean, it sold 3.3 million. I mean, that was a launch title, but this is what I've seen comparisons as far as like reviews, as far as being a spin-off title, and that doesn't even break. I mean, it's maybe between United States and Japan like a third of a million, which is minuscule. Which I also don't know what the budget was for this game.
Yeah.
Will you look up the sales data for Toadstool Tour since I can't find it and I'm just stuck on it now?
Toadstool Tour sales.
I would, but I can't reach my keyboard right now.
Oh, no. Okay. So, let's see. It sold, in the United States, 830,000 copies.
Yeah, okay. Wario World sold very poorly. Like, I assumed that was the case, but I don't know. That's still kind of a big number.
So, it released in 2003. By 2007, it sold over 1 million. So, I mean, I'm looking at it right now. It's over $30 million in profit. So, scale that down. I don't know if this game would have been cheaper or whatever. I'm sure it recouped its budget, but still, it's probably part of the reason why we don't have many Wario games today is because of this, the poor performance of this game.
We got a new WarioWare coming out this year, though. Let's go. All right. So, Ryder, I think finishing with your review is probably going to be our best bet.
You probably don't want to start with me. So
No, I was going to say, so that'll be the last thing we do. So, Joe, would you recommend that other people play this game? Are you going to slap that press A seal of quality on this game?
No. I don't think it's
Ooh.
No asterisk. Oh, it's just no. Just don't play it.
I have no reason to recommend Wario World to anybody. There are much better platformers on the GameCube, and it by itself is not in particular a good game.
Yeah, I'm also going to have to say no for the same reasons. Last episode, I was thinking no unless you're a big 3D platformer fan or unless you're a big like Mario fan. But honestly, unless you're just like the world's biggest Wario fan, I just can't think of a reason to play this instead of another platformer or another beat 'em up.
Recording our very first episode of our new series, Salty Tears.
All right, Ryder, would you recommend this game to other players?
You guys hear me well?
Yeah.
All right, let me see. Let me go through my notes real quick. Bear with me. All right. My previous experience with Wario games, like I said earlier, primarily from Wario Land and the WarioWare series. They're both very fun series. So surprisingly enough, for me, this game was anything but fun. The beat-em-up mechanics are shallow. There's no real growth or development in the combat. While there is a currency in the game, its only use is to revive you. Something that is particularly common but disproportionate in cost to the amount of currency you find throughout the 6 hours of a slog that this game is. Some beat-em-ups allow you to use that in-game currency previously mentioned to purchase combos, new moves, that maybe add a bit of flair or speed up combat, making combat that's something I would actually enjoy. Something that you can continually build on and learn from, and this game has nothing of the sort. Most of the combat boils down to mashing B, spinning enemies, and pile-driving enemies into each other. The platforming sections are definitely better than the beat-em-up portions of the game, but it's still not particularly enjoyable. Since the camera only moves at 45-degree intervals and Wario handles like a kettlebell tied to a rope, some sections are insufferable, especially when falling off a platform means returning to the beginning. Any fondness that I held for the platforming sections will forever be tainted by what was essentially the baton death march of 3D platformers, where there was no less than a 15-minute section where any mistake was punished by a insta restart. This section that if you could just progress by walking through it might have taken a minute and a half, took me at least 30 minutes to complete. We've already talked about this section. Me and Joseph hated it. Kurt, go watch it or play it.
Go play it.
I say that it at least took this long because I didn't start looking at the clock until I'd already had to restart it multiple times. I was frustrated, so it took me at least 30 minutes. I have no clue when I started, only when I finished this mini level. Both the beat 'em up and platforming sections leave me bored and frustrated. The only jumping I wanted to do while playing this game was up and down in frustration, and the only thing I wanted to beat up was my TV. I've played every Souls game with the exception of Demon's Souls. I've played Contra and Ninja Gaiden, albeit I've not beaten it, and I've never wanted to throw my controller through my TV, but I almost did it during this game. Why does it bring out the worst in me? I don't know for certain, but I think it's because I felt no reward throughout any of these platforming or beat-em-up sections. Each level went on for too long for me to enjoy the small parts that actually were enjoyable. The art style is meh. The enemy diversity is non-existent in the first half. By the second half, there's much more enemy diversity, but some of the reskinned enemies just don't make any sense. It feels like when designing this game, everyone wrote some things, threw it into a hat, and when they picked out the results, they just ran with whatever they had. For me, the only truly good thing about this game were the boss fights. The variety as far as boss fights was actually pretty okay. The designs were, interesting, at least. And for the most part, they left me feeling fairly accomplished when I beat them. That said, it's kind of like being at Grandma's funeral and saying, well, at least the family had a catered meal. As good as the mini turkey sandwiches may have been, Grandma's still dead. Maybe my expectations were too high, but I'm honestly disappointed that I felt disappointment with this game. Here's a few things that I've experienced in my life that, may have elicited similar feelings to my disappointment playing this game. Seeing a mother's face after their child told them that they are too old to now sit in their mother's lap. My childhood crush of 8 years saying ew when a classmate suggested that we would make a cute couple. Waiting your entire life to see Luke Skywalker in a new Star Wars movie just for him to not speak in the first movie and then be killed in the second. Being invited to a silent disco by a cute girl from class and turning her down because you need to go shower, only to realize she was actually asking you out. opening your Taco Bell bag and realizing that you forgot your Diablo sauce again. I can't say with certainty or even honesty that this is the worst game I've ever played, because that would probably be Pokemon Snap. This is, however, probably the worst game I've actually beaten. If someone wanted to threaten the lives of my family if I couldn't beat this game again, I can't say I wouldn't want to save them, but I know that I wouldn't want to play the game again even more. No, I do not recommend this game. Good night.
And
No, I'm kidding. I'm not going to leave. But I wrote that at like 3:45 to 4 a.m. in the morning after finishing this game. I hate this game. Wario is forever tainted. Nintendo, you should burn your company to the ground and restart.
Wait, Ryder, you've played the Wario Land games?
Wario Land 4 is probably the best platform.
I'll stop. But that's my review, my honest review for Wario World.
And with that, thank you all so much for watching this episode of Backlog Crew. I usually like to announce the next game we're going to do at the end of these, but I just realized that we never officially decided. So stay tuned. It'll be a surprise and hopefully not something Ryder vehemently hates. But yeah, thanks for watching and have a great day.
Bye.